whispers of a leadership challenge and more poor reviews of her performance at Prime Minister's questions, were no way for Kemi Badenoch to celebrate 100 days at the head of His Majesty's opposition. With donors said to be deserting the party, and staff morale plunging fast, Badenoch is now on notice that the countdown to her dismissal as leader of the Conservatives has begun. Baroness Ruth Davidson, who is a regular contributor to the always insightful Electoral Dysfunction podcast, and who serves as a media outlet for Conservatives' disapproval of Badenoch, has been saying for months that the leader is in trouble. Nigel Farage, the owner of Reform, gives Badenoch no more than 18 months. Others are confident that the axe will fall this year. Even the normally fawning Daily Express warned its readers that Badenoch has plummeted 19 points, to record an approval rating of just 13% among party members. The Independent added to Tory gloom by reporting that 26% of Conservative voters in last year's election have now switched to Farage's party. This year's May local elections were already underlined in red for Conservatives. Pundits expected the party to finish third behind the Labour government and Reform. The decision to postpone elections across vast swathes of the country could affect the final electoral arithmetic, but it is unlikely to challenge the perception that Badenoch does not have what most voters want. A poor showing in the local ballot will detonate a summer of leadership speculation, but the political calculus among saner Tories must surely be to let Badenoch simmer in her own political juice, at least until 2026, even if that means she is a lame duck Tory leader. Yes, she is failing to make an impact at Westminster. Yes, her poll ratings are dismal. And yes, her famed inability to schmooze with the media is hurting her among political hacks, who are increasingly personal in their criticism of the North West Essex MP. In Badenoch's defense, she faces enormous difficulties as an opposition leader after her party's landslide defeat. At this stage in the electoral cycle, it makes little sense to complete a policy review within 6 months of a devastating result, and some 3.5 years before the next general election test. Badenoch's policy teasing may great, but it's the only strategy available to her. But in 2025, Badenoch's lack of beef is unacceptable to many within her own party. She may lament the telegenic hard-right pitchman on television and social media every day, who makes her look charmless. She may be furious at the gushing fan content he attracts from an admiring hard-right media corps, but Badenoch knew all this well before the Tory election contest began. What is clear is that the steady drumbeat of Badenoch bashing will go on. Unless Badenoch can turn her fortunes around, she will be put out of her misery by ruthless Conservative paymasters. A new leader will then be anointed and given 18 months to get him, or herself, in front of British voters, to establish clearly for what the Conservative Party stands. If this is the most likely scenario and timetable, the question that still confronts Conservatives is who is best placed to pick up the Tory standard ahead of the next election? But who is the Conservative that would do a better job under the circumstances? Step forward the eager and ready to please Robert Jenrick. Jenrick lost last year's leadership battle but appears to be winning the ideological war within the party and must be the immediate favorite to claim the Tory crown. Being the front-runner and a shameless rider of bandwagons might be 2 reasons why Jenrick will not become Tory leader. But for the moment, his pitch to be Nigel Farage-light may appeal to those Conservatives who judge the party's fortunes by the number of approving commentaries broadcast by GB News and Talk TV. On immigration, leaving the European Convention on Human Rights and all the other reform shibboleths, Jenrick would position the Tories to bring home disaffected Tory voters. But is a right-wing manifesto that commands the applause of hard-right media pyromaniacs really a program for government? Can it win over the majority of British voters? Jenrick and his fellow travellers seem to have forgotten the July 2024 electoral data that showed the Conservative Party to have lost far more seats to the Liberal Democrats than to Reform. This is why Badenoch talks the language of the hard right but is yet to commit herself publicly to the Jenrick Reform agenda. That said, Badenoch's wait-and-see approach and her come-hither signals to reform voters are doing the Tory leader no favors in the polls. So what is Badenoch to do? There is no shortage of advice, from those who wish Badenoch well in her mission, and from some who hope that she tumbles haplessly into their well-laid traps. The Tory leader's tour of London podcast studios was overdue, but it will not make up for the Tories' inability to develop a modern social media strategy that cuts through with voters. Farage is lauded for his mastery of the medium. To rant that Britain is going to the dogs, and it's all the fault of the migrants, is to reach for the lowest fruit hanging on the mass communication tree. Badenoch should not follow suit, but she should lean into new media with an explanation of the Tory alternative to the Labour government on bread and butter issues. Immigration gets the blood levels rising among the London punditocracy and radio call-in hosts, but elsewhere, it is surely the Tory message on cost of living concerns that will be the key to the Conservative comeback. Badenoch must also cut out the silly own goals at Westminster that so irritate the lobby correspondents. She must also use her period in opposition to update Tory first principles. According to the critic, suggestions that Badenoch is a well-read intellectual grandee seem laughably misplaced. Such criticism should sting Badenoch, but the worries of Baroness Davidson and others, that Badenoch could spend more time meeting with regional voters, especially in target constituencies, should bite even more. The message is clear. Badenoch needs to get out more. Or else. Thank you for listening to this podcast from our Master's Blankets. We are delighted to have your attention and your feedback. Please like and share this podcast. And whilst you're here, please consider subscribing to this channel for more audio stories and book reviews. This helps us to keep going. Thanks a lot. See you next time.